The alien ship came out of nowhere. One moment, the Earth Defense Station was monitoring normal space traffic around the planet. The next moment, alarms were screaming as an unknown vessel dropped out of hyperspace right in front of them. Captain Jake Morrison rushed to the command center, his coffee still steaming in his hand. The night shift crew looked nervous as they stared at their screens. The ship on the display was unlike anything they had ever seen. It looked like a giant crystal mixed with metal, all sharp edges and strange curves. "Sir, they're sending a message," reported Lieutenant Davis from the communications station. "It's coming through on all frequencies." "Put it through," Jake ordered. The main screen flickered and showed the face of something that was definitely not human. The creature had pale blue skin and large black eyes that took up most of its face. Its mouth was small, and when it spoke, the words came out in a language that sounded like music mixed with whispers. "This is Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Republic," the Universal Translator announced in a robotic voice. "We request immediate audience with Earth's leaders. Our people are dying. We need help." Jake looked at his crew. First contact with an alien species was supposed to be handled by the diplomats and scientists, not a military captain on the night shift. But the alien's voice carried something that made Jake's chest tighten with worry. Pure desperation. "Ambassador Kethvar, this is Captain Morrison of the Earth Defense Coalition. We'll arrange a meeting. Please dock at Bay 7. 2 hours later, Jake stood in the station's main conference room. The place was packed with people who had been dragged out of bed for this historic moment. Dr. Lisa Parker, the station's chief scientist, sat at the table with her tablet ready. Commander Rick Taylor, head of military operations, stood near the door with his arms crossed. The doors opened and Ambassador Kethvar walked in. Up close, the alien looked even stranger. He was tall and thin, about 7 feet high, with arms that seemed too long for his body. His skin had a shine to it like polished stone. But what struck Jake the most were the alien's eyes. They held a sadness so deep it made Jake want to look away. "Thank you for meeting with us," Kethvar said, his voice soft even through the translator. "I am sorry we could not follow your first contact protocols. Time is something we no longer have." "What's happening to your people?" Dr. Parker asked, leaning forward. Kethvar touched a device on his wrist and the room's main screen lit up. The image showed a planet that looked like Earth might have millions of years ago. Green oceans, white clouds, and continents covered in what looked like cities made of the same crystal material as the ship. "This was our homeworld of Zephyr Prime," the ambassador said. "Population of 8 billion, our oldest colony, where our civilization began 3,000 years ago." The image changed. Now the planet looked like a burned rock. The oceans were black. The continents were covered in strange, twisted structures that looked like they were made of metal and bone. "This is Zephyr Prime today," Kethvar continued. "The Vex swarm came 6 months ago. In 3 days they consumed everything." Commander Taylor stepped forward. "Consumed? The Vex are not like other species. They do not want our planets for resources or territory. They eat life itself. Every plant, every animal, every person becomes food for their hive ships. Then they use that biomass to create more of themselves." The screen showed new images. Creatures that looked like giant insects made of black crystal and metal. They moved in perfect waves, millions of them at once, covering the ground like a living carpet of death. "We tried to fight them," Kethvar said, his voice breaking. "Our defense fleets had weapons that could crack moons in half. Our soldiers had armor that could stop plasma cannon fire. Nothing worked. The Vex adapted to everything we used against them. Every weapon we fired, every strategy we tried, they learned from it and became stronger." Dr. Parker was taking notes as fast as she could. "How many worlds have they taken?" 17 species have been completely wiped out," the ambassador replied. "We have lost 2 of our 3 homeworlds. The last one, Zephyr Alpha, has perhaps 2 weeks before they arrive." Jake studied the tactical data that was now scrolling across the screen. The numbers were huge. Billions of the Vex creatures, hundreds of their bioships, each one the size of a city. Every battle showed the same pattern. The aliens would throw everything they had at the swarm. For a few hours, it would look like they might win. Then the Vex would adapt, and the slaughter would begin. "Why come to us?" Commander Taylor asked. "No offense, but we barely have starships. Our most advanced weapon is a fusion bomb. What could we possibly do that species with thousand-year-old civilizations couldn't?" Kethvar was quiet for a long moment. "Honestly, we do not know. We have asked every major power in the galaxy for help. The Kronite Empire said the fight was hopeless. The Mirthal Federation closed their borders to avoid attracting the swarm's attention. The Luxara Collective simply vanished into another dimension rather than face them. But you came to us anyway," Jake said. "Because we have nothing left to lose," the ambassador replied. "In our research, we discovered that your species comes from what we call a death world, a planet so dangerous that most life forms would die within hours of landing there. Your gravity is crushing, your weather is violent, your very air is poisonous to most species. Yet somehow, you not only survived, but thrived." Dr. Parker looked up from her notes. "You think our harsh environment might have prepared us for something like this?" "I think desperation makes strange allies," Kethvar said. "Every species the Vex have destroyed fought them the same way. With honor, with advanced technology, with careful strategy. All of them lost because they played by rules the Vex could understand and adapt to." The alien looked directly at Jake. "Your species has a reputation among the few galactic observers who have studied you. You are called unpredictable, chaotic, willing to break any rule to survive. The Galactic Council considers these to be primitive traits." "But you think they might be exactly what's needed," Jake finished. "I think we are about to find out," Kethvar said. "Will you help us?" Jake looked around the room. He could see the doubt in everyone's faces. They were being asked to fight an enemy that had destroyed civilizations thousands of years older than human society. It was insane. But Jake had learned something during his years in the military. Sometimes the impossible was just another word for something nobody had tried yet. "We'll help," he said. "But we do this our way." The ambassador's large eyes seemed to brighten with the first hope Jake had seen in them. "What do you need?" Jake smiled, and it was not a nice smile. "Time to show the galaxy what a Deathworld species can do when it gets angry." The emergency meeting in the Pentagon lasted 3 hours. General Adams sat at the head of the table looking at the faces of Earth's military leaders. Everyone was arguing about what to do next. "We should send our best ships," said Admiral Wright. "The new destroyers with plasma cannons. Those toys won't work," Commander Taylor replied, pulling up the battle footage on his tablet. "Look at this data. The Vex adapted to plasma weapons in less than 10 minutes. They've seen everything these aliens could throw at them, Captain." Jake Morrison stood up from his chair. "We're thinking about this all wrong. Everyone keeps talking about sending our most advanced stuff, but that's exactly what failed every other time." "What are you suggesting?" General Adams asked. Jake looked around the room. "We send people who know how to fight dirty, people who grew up in the worst places on Earth and learned to survive when everything was trying to kill them. You want to send street fighters against an interstellar army?" Admiral Wright laughed. "That's insane." "Maybe," Jake said. "But insane is what we're good at." 3 days later, Jake was in Detroit, walking through the ruins of what used to be the auto factories. The city had been hit hard by the climate wars 20 years ago. Most people had moved away, but some stayed behind. The ones who stayed were tough in ways that the military academies couldn't teach. He found Sergeant Danny Cruz in a bar that didn't have a name. The place was dark and smelled like motor oil and cheap whiskey. Danny was sitting alone at a corner table, staring at a glass of something that looked like it could strip paint. "Danny Cruz?" Jake asked. The man looked up. Half of Danny's face was covered in burn scars from his time in the Australian desert campaign. His left eye was cloudy white, but his right eye was sharp as a knife. "Depends who's asking," Danny said. "Captain Morrison, Earth Defense Coalition. I have a job offer." Danny laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "I'm retired, Captain. Did my time fighting in hell. Not interested in going back." Jake sat down across from him. "This isn't about fighting other humans. This is about fighting something that wants to eat every living thing on Earth." He showed Danny the tablet with the Vex footage. Danny watched without saying anything for 5 minutes. When the video ended, he looked up at Jake. These things killed all those alien civilizations? Everyone. With technology we can only dream of. Danny finished his drink in one gulp. When do we leave? The next stop was Los Angeles. Jake found Lieutenant Amy Foster in the underground tunnels beneath the city. She was teaching a group of kids how to make explosives from household chemicals. The kids couldn't have been older than 16, but they listened to her like she was a professor. That's enough for today, Amy told them when she saw Jake. Remember, never mix the compounds until you're ready to use them. The kids scattered into the tunnels like rats. Amy turned to face Jake. She was small, maybe 5 feet tall, with short black hair and hands that were permanently stained with chemical burns. You're military, she said. It wasn't a question. How'd you know? The way you stand, the way you scan the room for exits. What do you want? Jake explained about the aliens and the Vex swarm. Amy listened while she cleaned her equipment with practiced movements. So you want me to blow up space bugs, she said when he finished. I want you to teach them that humans don't fight fair. Amy grinned. I like that. When do we start? In Chicago, Jake found Tony Blake in an illegal fighting ring deep under the old subway tunnels. The crowd was screaming as Tony fought a man twice his size. The big guy had muscles like tree trunks and fists like hammers. Tony was lean and quick, dancing around the bigger fighter like he was playing a game. The fight ended when Tony grabbed the big man's arm and twisted it in a way that arms weren't supposed to bend. The man tapped out and Tony helped him to his feet like they were old friends. Not bad, Tony said to his opponent, but you telegraph your right hook. Jake approached him after the crowd had cleared out. Tony was maybe 30 years old with scars on his knuckles and a nose that had been broken more than once. Tony Blake? Yeah. You a cop? Military. I have a proposition for you. Tony listened to the story while he wrapped his hands. When Jake finished, Tony was quiet for a long time. So these aliens have been fighting this bug army with spaceships and laser guns? That's right. And they all lost? Every single one. Tony nodded slowly. Maybe they never tried hitting the bugs with their fists. The last member of the team was Dr. Kate Wilson. Jake found her in a research station in Alaska, where she was studying bacteria that could survive in the ice. She was a small woman with gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Dr. Wilson? I'm Captain Morrison. I know who you are, she said without looking up from her microscope. I've been following the news about our alien visitors. Then you know why I'm here. You want me to join some kind of suicide mission against an enemy that has destroyed 17 civilizations. She finally looked at him. The question is, why would I want to do that? Jake showed her the medical data from the Zephyrian survivors. Look at this. The Vex use some kind of biological weapon to break down their victims before consuming them. But the process is slow. It takes hours. Kate studied the data. Interesting. Their biology is completely different from anything on Earth. Silicon-based, instead of carbon-based. Could our bacteria affect them? Kate was quiet for a long time. It's possible. Earth's microorganisms evolved in one of the most hostile environments in the galaxy. They might be toxic to alien biology. Will you help us find out? Kate smiled for the first time since Jake had arrived. I've been waiting my whole career for a chance to test Earth biology against alien systems. When do we leave? A week later, all 5 humans were aboard the Zephyrian ship, heading for the last free world in their system. Ambassador Kethvar watched them with confusion as they prepared for battle. Danny Cruz was checking his equipment. Instead of energy weapons, he had chemical explosives, kinetic firearms, and what looked like primitive combat gear. Amy Foster was mixing compounds in small containers that smelled terrible. Tony Blake was doing exercises that looked more like a dance than military training. Captain Morrison, Kethvar said quietly, I must ask, are you certain these are your best warriors? Jake looked at his team. They didn't look like much compared to the alien soldiers with their gleaming armor and energy weapons. But Jake had seen what these 4 could do when everything went wrong. Ambassador, Jake said, You've never seen humans fight for something they care about. You're about to learn why Earth is called a death world. The ship dropped out of hyperspace near Zephyr Alpha. Through the viewports, they could see the massive bioships of the Vex swarm moving toward the planet like a dark cloud. They'll be here in 6 hours, Kethvar said. Danny Cruz stood up and checked his weapons one more time. Good. That gives us time to set up a proper welcome. The battle for the last free world in the galaxy was about to begin, and for the first time in their history, the Vex swarm was going to face an enemy that didn't fight by the rules. The Vex came at dawn. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the command deck of the Zephyrian Defense Station, watching the enemy ships move closer to the planet. They looked like giant insects made of black metal and bone, each one the size of a city. There were hundreds of them blotting out the stars. How long until they reached the surface? Jake asked. Commander Veltar, the Zephyrian military leader, checked his instruments. 2 hours, maybe less. Jake looked at his team. Danny Cruz was cleaning his rifle for the 3rd time. Amy Foster was putting small explosives into her backpack. Tony Blake was stretching like he was getting ready for a workout. Dr. Kate Wilson was filling spray bottles with something that smelled like rotten eggs. You know this is hopeless, Commander Veltar said quietly. My people have been fighting the Vex for months. We have energy shields, plasma cannons, quantum disruptors. Nothing stops them. Maybe, Jake said, but you've never fought them the way we're going to. The first wave of Vex ships landed on the outskirts of New Zephyr City. The alien defenders watched on their screens as millions of the creatures poured out of the bioships. They moved like water, flowing across the ground in perfect waves. Each creature was about 8 feet tall, with 6 legs and arms that ended in razor-sharp claws. Their heads were covered in spikes and their eyes glowed red in the darkness. They're heading for the city center, Veltar reported. Just like always, they'll try to capture the population centers first. Not this time, Danny said, picking up his rifle. Jake, we doing this or what? Jake nodded. Remember the plan. Don't fight them head on. Hit and run. Make them come to us. The human team left the command center and headed for the surface. The Zephyrian soldiers watched them go with expressions that clearly said they thought the humans were walking to their deaths. Danny led them through the narrow streets of the city. Unlike the Zephyrian military, the humans didn't form battle lines or set up defensive positions. Instead, they scattered into the ruins of buildings that had been damaged in earlier attacks. Amy, you ready? Danny spoke into his radio. Born ready, came the reply. The first group of Vex creatures came around the corner at full speed. There were maybe 50 of them, moving in perfect formation. They expected to find cowering civilians or organized military resistance. Instead, they found Amy Foster's welcome gift. The explosion shook the entire city block. Amy had rigged the street with homemade bombs that used chemicals she'd found in a local factory. The blast sent chunks of concrete and metal flying in all directions. When the smoke cleared, half the Vex creatures were gone. The rest were confused and scattered. That's when Danny opened fire. His bullets weren't made of energy or plasma. They were simple pieces of metal fired by chemical explosions. The Vex had never seen anything like them before. Their armor, designed to deflect energy weapons, couldn't stop the crude kinetic projectiles. Danny's rifle punched holes through their chitinous shells like they were made of paper. What the hell was that? Commander Veltar's voice crackled over the radio from the command center. That was humans fighting dirty, Jake replied, watching more Vex creatures pour into the street. The second wave was larger. Over 100 creatures, moving faster and more carefully now. They had adapted to the threat of explosives and were spreading out to avoid bunching up. That's when Tony Blake dropped from a 3rd-story window right into the middle of them. The Zephyrian soldiers watching on their monitors couldn't believe what they were seeing. No species in galactic history had ever tried to fight the Vex in hand-to-hand combat. It was considered suicide. Tony didn't seem to know that. He moved like a dancer, spinning and striking with his bare hands and simple metal weapons. Where the Vex expected overwhelming force, Tony gave them precise strikes to weak points they didn't know they had. He hit the joints between their armor plates, struck nerve clusters that made their legs collapse, and used their own momentum against them. A Vex warrior tried to grab him with its claws. Tony caught the creature's arm, twisted it around, and used the alien's own weight to throw it into 3 of its companions. They went down in a tangle of limbs and confusion. "Impossible," whispered one of the Zephyrian officers. "He's actually winning." But the real surprise came when Dr. Kate Wilson joined the fight. She didn't use weapons at all. Instead, she ran through the battle with her spray bottles, coating everything with the chemical mixture she had prepared. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then the Vex creatures began to slow down. "Kate, what did you do?" Jake asked over the radio. "Earth bacteria," she replied, dodging a swipe from a confused-looking Vex warrior. "Turns out our microorganisms are highly toxic to silicon-based life forms. These things have no immunity to common Earth germs." The Vex creatures were starting to stumble. Their movements became jerky and uncoordinated. Some of them simply collapsed, their bodies unable to function as Earth bacteria ate away at their internal systems. The human team regrouped in an abandoned building. Around them, the streets were littered with dead and dying Vex creatures. In 30 minutes, they had done something that no other species had managed in centuries of warfare. "This is impossible," Commander Veltar said when they returned to the command center. "The Vex adapt to every weapon used against them. How are you still effective?" Danny was reloading his rifle with fresh ammunition. "Maybe because we're not using weapons. We're using everything else." Amy was already preparing more explosives, this time mixing them with Kate's bacterial solution. "They can adapt to energy patterns and force fields. But can they adapt to good old-fashioned chaos?" The answer came with the second assault wave. This time the Vex came prepared for explosives and kinetic weapons. Their armor had thickened, and they moved in smaller groups to avoid Amy's bombs. But they hadn't prepared for what the humans did next. Tony had studied the way the creatures moved during the first battle. He noticed that they always turned left when threatened, always attacked with their right arms first, always moved in mathematical patterns. So he started doing things that made no sense at all. He would attack, then retreat, then attack again, from a completely different direction. He would make noise to draw them in, then disappear and attack from behind. He fought without any pattern or strategy that the Vex could understand and adapt to. Amy's explosives got more creative too. She rigged traps that went off at random times, not when the Vex triggered them. She made bombs that exploded upward instead of outward, sideways instead of forward, and some that didn't explode at all but just made loud noises and smoke. Danny taught some of the Zephyrian soldiers how to use kinetic weapons. "Don't aim for center mass," he told them. "Aim for the joints, aim for the eyes, aim for anything that looks important. And if you miss, aim somewhere else." Dr. Kate discovered that different Earth bacteria affected the Vex in different ways. Some made them slow, some made them sick, and some made them do strange things like walk in circles or attack each other. By the end of the day, something unprecedented had happened. The Vex swarm, which had never retreated from any battle in recorded history, was pulling back from the planet. "They're leaving," Commander Veltar said, staring at his screens in disbelief. "The bioships are moving away from the planet." "4 now," Jake said. "But they'll be back. And when they come, they'll try to adapt to what we did today." Danny grinned, his scarred face making the expression look dangerous. "Good. I was getting bored." The news spread across the galaxy faster than light-speed communication. For the first time in centuries, the unstoppable Vex swarm had been stopped. And it had been done by a species that most of the galaxy considered primitive. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. The Vex would study what happened here. They would try to find ways to counter human tactics. The real war was just starting, and humanity was about to show the galaxy what it really meant to come from a death world. The message came at 3 a.m. ship time. Captain Jake Morrison was woken up by his communication device beeping urgently. He rolled out of his bunk aboard the Zephyrian command ship and answered the call. "Captain Morrison," came a voice he didn't recognize. "This is Admiral Crixna of the Mirthal Federation. We need to talk." Jake rubbed his eyes. "Admiral, it's the middle of the night cycle." The Vex have attacked our home system, the voice said, and Jake could hear the fear in it. 3 of our worlds are already gone. We heard what you did at Zephyr Alpha. Please, we need your help. Jake was fully awake now. How many others? Others? How many other species have called asking for help? There was a long pause. 17 so far. The Vex have split their forces and are attacking multiple systems at once. They're moving faster than ever before. Jake got dressed quickly and headed to the command center. The place was buzzing with activity even at this hour. Ambassador Kethvar was there, along with Commander Veltar and Jake's human team. The galaxy is in panic, Kethvar explained when Jake arrived. Word of our victory has spread, but so has word of what the Vex are doing in response. They're attacking everywhere, at once. Danny Cruz was studying tactical displays from a dozen different star systems. Look at this pattern. They're not just randomly attacking, they're hitting the species that have the strongest militaries first. They're scared, Amy Foster said, looking up from her workbench where she was building new types of explosives. We hurt them, and now they're trying to end this war before more species figure out how to fight back. Dr. Kate Wilson was examining biological samples that had been sent from various attacked worlds. The Vex are adapting faster than we expected. Look at these readings. The newer creatures have thicker armor and different internal structures. Jake studied the reports coming in from across the galaxy. The situation was bad. Really bad. The Vex had never moved this aggressively before, and dozens of worlds were crying for help. We can't be everywhere at once, he said. No, Tony Blake said from where he was practicing combat moves in the corner. But we can teach others to fight, the way we do. That gave Jake an idea. 3 days later, the first human training camp was set up on the moon of Cronus 7. Species from across the galaxy sent their soldiers to learn what the humans called Deathworld combat. The alien soldiers were not impressed when they arrived. Colonel Hextar of the Kronite Empire looked at the training facility with disgust. Instead of advanced simulation chambers, there were obstacle courses made of scrap metal and broken concrete. Instead of energy weapon ranges, there were areas where soldiers practiced with crude chemical explosives and kinetic firearms. This is your advanced training? He asked Danny, who was running the program. Advanced? Danny laughed. Son, this is basic survival. We're going to teach you how to fight when everything goes wrong and you've got nothing left but your wits and whatever junk you can find lying around. The first lesson was about improvised weapons. Amy Foster showed the alien soldiers how to make explosives from common household chemicals. Most of them were horrified. This is against all civilized rules of warfare, protested Captain Yilden of the aquatic Myrthals. Yeah, Amy said, mixing 2 liquids that started smoking. That's the point. The Vex have adapted to civilized warfare. Time to get uncivilized. Tony Blake's hand-to-hand combat classes were even more shocking. He taught the aliens to fight dirty, to use their environment as a weapon, and to never fight fair if they could help it. But this lacks honor, said a Luxara warrior, his energy, form flickering with distress. Honor doesn't stop you from getting eaten, Tony replied. Winning does. Dr. Kate Wilson's biological warfare course was the most popular, mainly because it was the most effective. She taught alien medics how to weaponize their own planet's microorganisms against the Vex. Every world has bacteria and viruses that evolved in unique conditions, she explained. The Vex can't adapt to billions of years of evolution in just a few hours. But the most important lesson came from Jake himself. He taught strategy, or rather, the complete lack of it. Military tactics are about patterns, he explained to a room full of alien commanders. The Vex are really good at recognizing patterns and adapting to them, so we don't use patterns. That makes no sense, said Admiral Crixna, who had traveled from the Myrthal system to attend the class. Exactly, Jake said. If it doesn't make sense to you, it won't make sense to them either. He showed them battles from Earth's history, guerrilla fighters who had defeated superior forces by refusing to fight the way their enemies expected, soldiers who had won battles by doing things that any sane military academy would call insane. The key is unpredictability, Jake continued. Attack when they expect you to retreat. Retreat when they expect you to attack. use weapons they've never seen, fight in places they don't expect, make them adapt to something new every single day. The training worked better than anyone had hoped. The first success came at the Battle of Rigel Station. The Vex attacked expecting to face the usual Chronite energy weapons and defensive formations. Instead, they found Chronite soldiers using human-style, improvised explosives and guerrilla tactics. The battle lasted 3 days. When it was over, the Vex had lost for only the second time in their history. More victories followed. At Proxima Colony, Mirthal soldiers used their underwater cities as bases for hit-and-run attacks that the Vex couldn't predict or counter. On the desert world of Sandros Prime, Luxara energy beings learned to hide in the planet's electrical storms and strike without warning. But the humans weren't done innovating. Amy Foster had been working with alien scientists to create new types of weapons that combined human creativity with alien technology. Her plasma-enhanced chemical explosives were unpredictable enough that the Vex couldn't adapt to them. Her gravity-assisted kinetic weapons hit targets in ways that defied physics. Her masterpiece was something she called a chaos bomb. It was a device that used random chemical reactions to create completely unpredictable effects. Sometimes it exploded. Sometimes it released toxic gas. Sometimes it just made really loud noises and pretty lights. The Vex couldn't adapt to it, because even Amy didn't know what it would do. Tony Blake started teaching aliens how to study their enemies the way he did. He showed them how to watch for tiny behavioral patterns that could be exploited, how to recognize when an opponent was about to attack, and how to turn an enemy's strength into a weakness. Dr. Kate Wilson made the biggest breakthrough of all. Working with scientists from 17 different worlds, she created a biological weapon cocktail that included microorganisms from every major planet in the galaxy. It was like hitting the Vex with billions of years of evolution all at once. The results were devastating. Vex creatures that had seemed unstoppable began dying from infections they had no defense against. Their adaptation ability was overwhelmed by the sheer variety of biological threats. Danny Cruz became something of a legend. Videos of the scarred human teaching alien soldiers how to fight spread across galactic communication networks. His basic rule became famous throughout the galaxy. If you're fighting fair, you're doing it wrong. Jake received a message from the Galactic Council 3 months after the training program began. The Council, which had initially dismissed Earth as a primitive backwater, now wanted to officially recognize humanity as a guardian species. What does that mean? Jake asked Ambassador Kethvar. It means the galaxy acknowledges that your people are uniquely suited to protect others from threats that conventional military forces cannot handle, the ambassador replied. It's the highest honor the council can give. Jake looked at his team. Danny was cleaning his rifle and arguing with Tony about the best way to break someone's arm. Amy was mixing chemicals that probably violated several galactic treaties. Kate was studying samples of alien bacteria with the enthusiasm of a kid in a candy store. Thanks, but no thanks, Jake said. We're not guardians. We're just humans doing what humans do best. Which is? Jake smiled. Surviving. And making sure the things that try to kill us regret it. The war was far from over. The Vex had one more surprise waiting for the galaxy. But now they faced an enemy they had never encountered before. An entire galaxy that had learned to fight like humans. It was about to get very interesting. The Vex Queen's hive ship was bigger than most moons. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the combined fleet, looking at the massive bioconstruct through the viewport. It hung in space like a cancerous growth, all twisted metal and organic curves. Smaller ships moved around it like insects around a nest. Scans show the ship is over 200 miles long, reported Commander Veltar. The hull is made of some kind of living metal that repairs itself faster than our weapons can damage it. Jake nodded. 3 months of victories across the galaxy had led to this moment. The Vex had pulled all their forces back to protect their queen. Every remaining bioship, every creature, every weapon they had was concentrated here. How many are we facing? Asked Admiral Crixna of the Mirthal Federation. Conservative estimate? Danny Cruz said, checking his tablet. About 50 million Vex creatures inside that thing, plus whatever defenses they've built. The alien commanders looked nervous. This was the largest military operation in galactic history. Ships from every major species hung in space around them, but everyone knew that firepower alone wouldn't win this battle. "Remember the plan," Jake said over the fleet communication system. "We're not trying to destroy the ship from the outside. We're going inside to create chaos from within." Amy Foster was in the weapons bay, putting the finishing touches on her masterpiece. She called it the Ultimate Chaos Package, a collection of devices designed to turn the Hive ship's own systems against itself. "You sure this will work?" asked Dr. Kate Wilson, who was preparing her own biological weapons. "Honestly," Amy said, connecting wires to a device that looked like it was built from spare parts, "I have no idea. But that's what makes it perfect. If I don't know what it's going to do, the Vex sure won't be able to adapt to it." Tony Blake was training the assault teams one last time. The plan called for small groups to infiltrate the Hive ship at multiple points, while the main fleet kept the Vex distracted. "Remember what I taught you," he told a mixed group of human and alien soldiers. "Don't fight like an army. Fight like a virus. Get inside, spread out, cause problems everywhere at once." The attack began at dawn, ship time. The fleet opened fire on the Hive ship with everything they had. Energy beams, kinetic projectiles, plasma cannons, and quantum disruptors lit up space like a fireworks show. The Hive ship's defenses responded automatically, billions of small fighter creatures pouring out to meet the attack. But the real assault was already inside. Jake led the first infiltration team through a damaged section of the hull. They moved through corridors that looked like the inside of some giant creature's body, all curved walls and pulsing lights. "This place gives me the creeps," muttered one of the Cronite soldiers. "Good," Danny said, checking his rifle. "If it's creepy for us, imagine how the Vex feel about having us inside their home." The team split up according to plan. Each group had a specific target: life support systems, power cores, communication networks, and the Queen's chamber itself. Amy's group reached the ship's power distribution center first. The room was huge, filled with organic machinery that hummed with energy. Cables thick as tree trunks carried power to different parts of the ship. "This is where we start the party," Amy said, unpacking her devices. She didn't try to destroy the power systems. That would have been too easy for the Vex to fix. Instead, she introduced random elements into the network, devices that would make the power fluctuate unpredictably, systems that would redirect energy to the wrong places, and her favorite creation, a feedback loop that would make the ship's own repair systems fight each other. Tony's team found the ship's coordination center, where thousands of Vex creatures worked to control the Hive's movements. Tony had studied their behavior patterns for months, and he knew exactly what to do. Instead of attacking the creatures directly, he started changing things in the room. He moved control panels to different positions, switched the connections on communication devices, and rearranged the creatures' workstations while they were busy. The Vex didn't notice at first. They were used to their perfectly organized environment. But slowly, their coordination began to break down as they tried to use controls that no longer did what they expected. Dr. Kate's team reached the ship's biological processing center, where the Vex turned captured life forms into nutrients for the Hive. The room was full of organic vats and processing equipment. Kate smiled as she opened her containers of Earth bacteria. "Time to introduce you to some friends from the neighborhood," she said, pouring the microorganisms into the ship's biological systems. The bacteria went to work immediately. They were designed to attack silicon-based life forms, but Kate had made improvements. These new strains didn't just kill. They caused random mutations in anything they touched. Jake's team had the hardest job. They were heading for the Queen's chamber, deep in the heart of the ship. The corridors got stranger as they went deeper, with walls that seemed to breathe and floors that shifted under their feet. "Contact," Danny reported over the radio. "Vex warriors ahead." The creatures came at them in perfect formation, just like always. But these humans had been fighting the Vex for months now. They knew every trick, every weakness, every way to turn the aliens' own tactics against them. Danny's team didn't form a battle line. They scattered using the ship's twisted architecture to their advantage. They fired from unexpected angles, used the Vex's own coordination against them, and fought with the dirty, chaotic style that had made them famous across the galaxy. The deeper they went, the more obvious it became that something was wrong with the ship. The lights flickered randomly thanks to Amy's power system sabotage. Vex creatures wandered in circles, confused by Tony's changes to their coordination systems. Strange growths appeared on the walls where Kate's bacteria had caused mutations. In the ship's living metal. "The whole place is falling apart," one of the alien soldiers observed. "That's the idea," Jake replied. "The Vex built this ship to be perfect. We're introducing imperfection." They reached the Queen's chamber just as the chaos reached its peak. The room was enormous, with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness. In the center sat the Vex Queen, a creature the size of a building with thousands of eyes and countless arms. She was surrounded by her elite guards, creatures bigger and more dangerous than any they had faced before. But even these perfect warriors were affected by the chaos spreading through the ship. "Your species should not exist," the Queen said, her voice echoing through their translators. "You fight without honor, without pattern, without sense." "Yeah," Jake said, raising his weapon. "That's what makes us human." The final battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It wasn't a clash of armies or a duel between champions. It was pure chaos. Humans and aliens fighting alongside each other with improvised weapons and impossible tactics, while the ship fell apart around them. Amy's devices reached critical mass, causing chain reactions throughout the ship's systems. Tony's sabotage made it impossible for the Vex to coordinate their defenses. Kate's biological weapons turned the ship's own repair systems into agents of destruction. The Queen fought with desperate fury, but she had never faced an enemy like this. Her perfect strategies meant nothing against opponents who had no strategy at all. In the end, it was Tony Blake who landed the killing blow. Not with an advanced weapon or some brilliant tactic, but with a simple piece of metal pipe that he drove through a gap in the Queen's armor that probably shouldn't have existed. The Vex Queen died, and with her, the hive mind that controlled the entire swarm. Across the galaxy, Vex creatures simply stopped. Without the Queen's coordination, they became nothing more than confused animals. The threat that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was over. Jake stood in the ruins of the Queen's chamber, surrounded by his team and their alien allies. Through the broken walls, he could see space where the combined fleet was celebrating their victory. "So what now?" Danny asked, reloading his rifle out of habit. Jake thought about it. The galaxy was safe, but there were still unexplored regions out there, still mysteries to solve and new challenges to face. "Now we go home," he said. "But something tells me the universe is going to keep us busy." Ambassador Kethvar found them an hour later. The Zephyrian was practically glowing with joy. "The Galactic Council wants to honor you," he said. "They're talking about building monuments, writing histories, declaring galactic holidays." "That's nice," Jake said, "but we'll pass." "You don't want recognition for saving the galaxy?" Jake looked at his team. Danny was arguing with an alien engineer about the proper way to rig explosives. Amy was already sketching designs for new weapons. Tony was teaching a group of young aliens some basic fighting moves. Kate was collecting samples of the ship's mutated biology for study. "We didn't save the galaxy," Jake said. "We just did what humans do. We survived, and we helped our friends survive too." As their ship prepared to leave for Earth, Jake received one final message from the Galactic Council. They had updated humanity's file in their records. Where it once read, "primitive pre-spaceflight civilization," it now said something different. "Deathworld. Species unpredictable, extremely dangerous when threatened. Recommend diplomatic approach at all times. Under no circumstances should this species be considered weak or primitive. Their greatest strength lies in their complete willingness to break any rule in order to protect what they care about." Jake smiled as he read it. That seemed about right. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Sometimes the most advanced technology in the universe was no match for a few humans who refused to give up. And somewhere in the depths of space there were probably other threats waiting to test that lesson again.